Welcome back to Baha'i on Air and to the Deep Dive. It's really great to have you with us again.
It's a real pleasure to be diving in with you again. Thank you, our listener, for tuning in. Our shared mission, every time is to really pull out the most important nuggets of knowledge and insight from the source material.
Yes.
Think of it as, well, maybe your shortcut to being truly well-informed with some surprising facts and hopefully just enough connection to keep you hooked.
Absolutely. And before we really plunge into today's material, if you find these deep dives as fascinating as we do, please do remember to subscribe to our channel.
Yeah, that really helps us out.
It does. And share this with friends who you think would enjoy it. Maybe leave us a comment with your thoughts.
We love reading those.
We do. And even suggest future topics you'd like us to explore. We really thrive on building this community of curious minds together. Now, for those just joining us, or perhaps those catching up, this is part 2 of a special deep dive series into Shoghi Effendi's incredibly powerful, really monumental work, The Promised Day Has Come.
Mm-hmm.
And if you haven't had a chance to listen to part 1 yet, we really, really encourage you to go back and do that first.
So definitely, it absolutely sets the foundational stage for everything we're about to unpack today.
Right. And believe me, you'll get a much fuller, richer grasp of the profound narrative that unfolds if you hear that first part.
Exactly. We're continuing our exploration of this, seminal text, approaching it from a Baha'i perspective.
Yeah.
Today we're going to delve much deeper into the really profound historical references it makes.
Yeah.
We'll try to truly understand why these powerful writings were penned in the first place, and crucially, explore their enduring application to our lives.
As individuals.
As individuals, exactly, and to the broader tapestry of society. We'll also critically analyze the very purpose of religion and spirituality itself as illuminated by these Baha'i writings.
Which is quite a task.
It is. It's a journey that really challenges many conventional assumptions, I think.
And prepare yourselves, because you're about to hear about some truly dramatic revelations regarding prophecies, some of which seem, utterly audacious.
Mm-hmm. Audacious is a good word.
And their astonishing, almost unbelievable fulfillment. It's going to be quite an illuminating journey, one that might just reshape how you view historical events and maybe the forces that drive them.
Yeah. Okay, let's truly unpack this. I want you to try and imagine, just for a moment, 2 figures living in the mid-19th century. One, the Bab, a young man, often imprisoned facing relentless persecution. The other, Bahá'u'lláh, an exile perpetually under sentence of banishment and confinement, from what, by any human standard, would be positions of utter vulnerability, right? Powerlessness.
They directly address the most powerful, absolute rulers and entrenched religious leaders of their time.
The sheer audacity, just from a human perspective, it's mind-boggling.
It really is. These weren't mere petitions or pleas for mercy.
No, not at all.
They were pronouncements of divine authority, declarations of a new spiritual era. It feels unprecedented in the annals of religious history.
It truly was.
What kind of world were they living in for this to be so utterly shocking?
Well, it's difficult to overstate how extraordinary this was when you really consider the historical context of the 19th century. These monarchs, the Ottoman Sultan, the Persian Shah, the French Emperor, the German Kaiser, the Russian Tsar, even the Pope.
Absolute top.
The absolute top. They wielded absolute, almost unquestioned power. They were accustomed to being revered, flattered, obeyed, not challenged.
Especially not by prisoners.
Especially not by those they considered political prisoners or, religious deviants. The messages from the Bab and Bahá'u'lláh weren't requests for clemency or favors for their followers.
Right.
On the contrary, they were bold, unconditional declarations of a new divine dispensation. They were asserting an authority that fundamentally transcended all earthly sovereignty.
So it wasn't just about getting recognition.
No, it set a powerful new precedent for the very purpose of religion itself. It demonstrated that its role is to elevate humanity, guide society, establish a higher moral order, regardless of who holds worldly power. It was a complete inversion of the accepted power dynamic of the time. Let's start with the Bab, who, for our listeners, is understood in the Baha'i faith as the herald of a new era, the one who sort of prepared the way.
Okay.
His direct communication with Muhammad Shah of Persia was, in essence, the genesis of this unparalleled form of divine address. It established that groundbreaking precedent for Bahá'u'lláh to follow.
So why was it written? What was the core purpose?
It was unequivocally a direct challenge, a challenge to the temporal and religious authority of the day. It was a proclamation that a new divine era had dawned, that even kings and their religious establishments were now accountable to God's newly revealed law. The Bab, despite his imprisonment, his suffering, proclaimed his station with unwavering certainty, not as some desperate plea, but as a statement of ours, incontrovertible fact. In his profound work, the Qayyumi Azma, which is seen as his primary commentary on the Surah of Joseph from the Quran, one of the first major Baha'i texts, and specifically in his tablet to Muhammad Shah, the Bab's self-declaration is incredibly clear and powerful. He states, and I'm quoting directly from the source here,
Okay.
I am the primal point from which have been generated all created things. I am the countenance of God, whose splendor can never be obscured, the light of God, whose radiance can never fade. All the keys of heaven God hath chosen to place on my right hand, and all the keys of hell on my left.
That's an astonishing claim. Primal point. That's not a common phrase, is it?
Yeah.
Could you elaborate on what that signifies in this context? Because it truly places him at the very source of creation and divine authority. That's a lot for any human to declare.
It is indeed. When the Bab refers to himself as the primal point, it's a profoundly significant theological statement. In the Baha'i understanding, it signifies that he is the source, the spiritual genesis, from which the new divine revelation emanates for this age.
Ah, okay. The origin point.
Exactly. He's not merely a prophet in a lineage, but the very point or origin of a new cycle of spiritual history. It implies that from his revelation, all subsequent spiritual knowledge and divine decrees for this new era derive. It's an ultimate claim of spiritual authority,
Right.
placing him not just as a messenger, but as the foundational spiritual luminary of a new dispensation. That's why his declaration to the Shah was so revolutionary. It wasn't just political, it was cosmic. And following this declaration, the Bab then issues a stark warning, a prophecy to the Shah himself. I swear by God, O Shah, if thou showest enmities unto him who is his remembrance, God will, on the day of resurrection, condemn thee before the kings unto hellfire.
Think about that. A divine judgment delivered from a prison cell to an absolute monarch.
Exactly. He further warns the Shah, Purge thou, O Shah, the sacred land Iran, from such as have repudiated the book, ere the day whereon the remembrance of God cometh, terribly and of a sudden, with his potent cause.
Yeah.
And critically, to underscore the impermanence of worldly power, he adds, Let not thy sovereignty deceive thee, O Shah, for every soul shall taste of death. And this, in very truth, hath been written down as a decree of God.
Reminding an absolute monarch of his own mortality.
And the utter transience of his power in the face of eternal truth. It's a radical assertion of spiritual reality over temporal illusion. The Bab also expresses his profound detachment from worldly things and his deep suffering. He states, I swear by God, I seek no earthly goods from thee, be it as much as a mustard seed. Wert thou to know that which I know, thou wouldst forego the sovereignty of this world and of the next, that thou mightest attain my good pleasure.
That really speaks to a perspective where worldly power, no matter how immense, is just insignificant compared to divine favor.
Utterly insignificant. And then there's this chilling observation about the persecution he faced, which really makes you pause. I swear by the truth of God, were he who hath been willing to treat me in such a manner to know who it is whom he hath so treated, he verily would never in his life be happy.
Wow.
Nay, I verily acquaint thee with the truth of the matter. It is as if he hath imprisoned all the prophets, and all the men of truth, and all the chosen ones.
That last quote is deeply unsettling, isn't it? It implies persecuting a manifestation of God isn't just persecuting an individual, but the very essence of divine revelation throughout history. So if we step back from these specific pronouncements, what does this extraordinary exchange between a prisoner and a monarch really mean for us today? What's the core insight here?
Well, it's a fundamental redefinition of power and purpose, really. When someone claims such a profound spiritual station and dares to challenge absolute temporal power from a position of, utter vulnerability, it immediately establishes that the very purpose of religion isn't just to reinforce existing power structures or be confined to personal piety. Rather, its ultimate aim is to transcend and even transform worldly authority. It asserts a higher divine standard, a set of universal principles that even kings and presidents, indeed all human institutions, must ultimately bow to.
So it challenges where we think true authority lies.
Absolutely. For you, our listener, this insight challenges those conventional notions. Do we look to political might, economic power, military strength as the ultimate arbiters? This message suggests true societal transformation doesn't come from political maneuvering or sheer force, but from adhering to universal moral principles.
That's a radical idea even today.
It is. It prompts us to ask, how does this concept challenge your assumptions about where real power originates and how it should be exercised? It proposes that real enduring power stems from spiritual truth, not fleeting worldly dominion.
Incredibly profound. Okay, so from that powerful genesis with the Bab, Baha'u'lláh then took this concept of direct divine address to an entirely new level. This is where it gets really interesting, because it wasn't just one or two rulers he addressed. He unfurled this vast panorama of messages, truly soul-searching, global in scope.
A huge scope.
Emperors, kings, princes, chancellors, ministers, the Pope himself,
Priests, monks.
philosophers, the rich, followers of all religions. This wasn't just a localized message for Persia or the Ottoman Empire.
No, it was a universal summons, a call to the entire planet. It was indeed. And the core themes running through these Baha'i tablets, these divine letters, these pronouncements, they're truly comprehensive, foundational. Baha'u'lláh consistently extol the transcendent majesty and unity of God, that God is one, beyond our comprehension.
Okay.
He proclaimed the oneness of his messengers throughout history. Moses, Jesus, Muhammad, all part of a single continuous divine plan. He stressed the uniqueness and universality of the Baha'i faith as a fulfillment of past prophecies, unfolding the purpose of the Babi revelation that came before him.
Right, the connection between the two.
Exactly. And beyond these foundational theological points, he also disclosed the profound significance of his own immense sufferings and banishments, explaining them not as punishment, but as a sacrifice for the world's spiritual awakening. He asserted the transitoriness of worldly pomp, fame, riches, sovereignty, reminding all leaders their power was fleeting. Crucially, his messages made insistent appeals for the highest principles in human and international relations, enjoining the abandonment of practices detrimental to unity.
Like war, prejudice.
War, prejudice, fanaticism, exactly. He didn't shy away from century kings, arraigning ecclesiastical dignitaries, condemning ministers for their actions, holding them accountable to a divine standard.
He wasn't pulling any punches.
Not at all. And perhaps most significantly, he unequivocally announced his advent as the coming of the Father, the fulfillment of prophecies across various, especially Christian prophecies, about the return of Christ and the glory of the Father. In these tablets, he even prophesied the violent downfall of several specific kings and emperors, some of whom he challenged by name.
Wow. And what's truly remarkable is that he wasn't just issuing pronouncements from afar, right? He actively challenged these powerful figures to engage with him directly, to investigate his claims.
Precisely.
For example, in the La Sablana, his tablet to Nariddin Shah, the Shah of Persia, Baha'u'lláh declares, and I'm quoting again, "Would that the world-adorning wish of His Majesty might decree that this servant be brought face to face with the divines of the age, and produce proofs and testimonies in the presence of His Majesty the Shah." He continues, "This servant is ready, and taketh hope in God that such a gathering may be convened. It is then for thee to command, and I stand ready before the throne of thy sovereignty. Decide then for me or against me."
That's an absolutely remarkable invitation for public inquiry, isn't it? Such profound confidence in his own truth.
Incredible confidence.
And it wasn't just to the Shah. In the Law Rais, the tablet to Rais Pasha, the Ottoman chief minister who oversaw his final banishment, Baha'u'lláh recounts a personal conversation. He asked this Turkish officer to transmit a request to the Sultan, saying, "There is a matter. I request thee to submit to His Majesty the Sultan that for 10 minutes this youth be enabled to meet him, so that he may demand whatsoever he deemeth as a sufficient testimony."
Just 10 minutes.
Just 10 minutes. Should God enable him to produce it, let him then release these wronged ones and leave them to themselves. And then he adds this poignant detail, revealing his motivation. "Although it becometh not him who is the truth to present himself before any person, yet in view of the condition of these little children and the large number of women so far removed from their friends and countries, we have acquiesced in this matter."
So the manifestation of God humbling himself, setting aside his inherent station for the sake of the people around him.
It's an incredible paradox, isn't it? Profound compassion even while asserting supreme spiritual authority, a powerful image of spiritual leadership.
So, if we distill all this down, what's the core takeaway for us from these unprecedented pronouncements and challenges? How does this deep dive into Baha'u'llah's universal addresses shift our understanding of religion's purpose?
Well, it illustrates the purpose of religion, not just as, static dogmas or personal rituals, but as a living dynamic force meant to engage with and transform society from its very foundations. It's about religion being a powerful catalyst for justice and truth, one that holds even the highest authorities accountable to divine standards. It fundamentally challenges us to consider where true authority lies,
Right.
earthly power or eternal spiritual principles.
Which prompts a question for our listener.
Exactly. For you, our listener, this means asking whether your own understanding of spirituality is something confined to your personal life or if it has a broader societal application. Does religion have a role in holding leaders accountable? Does it inspire movements for justice? This perspective suggests that religion, at its heart, is a transformative force, meant to reshape the world order towards unity, justice, and peace, rather than simply accepting the status quo. It's a call to view religion not as a retreat from the world, but as a dynamic, potent instrument for its progress.
Okay, now this is where the narrative takes a really dramatic turn. We've talked about these powerful, unprecedented messages, these challenges directed at the world's rulers. But what happens when such direct, unambiguous divine messages are ignored? Or worse, outright rejected, even scorned?
Right.
The source material reveals there were indeed disastrous consequences, a form of retributive justice that followed, echoing the warnings. What does this mean for the world?
Exactly. And what's truly fascinating here, and frankly quite astonishing, is how seemingly disparate events across continents unfolding decades after these warnings were uttered begin to connect in this profoundly coherent way when viewed through the lens of these prophecies.
That's like connecting the dots.
Precisely. The text describes this process not as a series of random misfortunes or historical coincidences, but as a direct, divinely orchestrated consequence and fulfillment of those very warnings. It's a powerful, chilling testament to the far-reaching impact of these spiritual pronouncements.
Demonstrating divine accountability.
Exactly. A principle of divine accountability that transcends human calculation. It shows that actions taken against a divine messenger have profound, systemic repercussions. Let's look first at Napoleon III, the Emperor of France. The source describes him as the most outstanding monarch of his day in the West.
Right, so big figure.
Huge, consciously trying to emulate his famous uncle, Napoleon I, in grandeur and ambition. Yet he was also characterized as a dreamer, a conspirator of a shifting nature, hypocritical and reckless.
Quite a mix.
A complex figure. Bahá'u'llah's first letter to him, sent through a minister, deliberately adopted a meek and unprovocative tone. It aimed to test the emperor's sincerity, his moral compass. It subtly recalled Napoleon's own stated justification for the Crimean War. Remember, the cry of the oppressed, drowned in the Black Sea, wakened me at dawn.
Right, using his own words.
Using his own words. Baha'u'lláh essentially asked, if you cared about that oppression, what about the far greater sufferings endured by him and his followers in Persia and the Ottoman Empire? Where was his compassion then?
And what was his response to this subtle but profound challenge?
According to the source, the response from Napoleon III was, shockingly insolent and dismissive.
Really?
It's recounted that he literally flung down the tablet, declaring with breathtaking arrogance, if this man is God, I am two gods.
Wow, that's unbelievable arrogance.
Isn't it? This prideful, contemptuous rejection wasn't left unanswered. It was met with a devastating prophecy from Baha'u'lláh in a second tablet. For what thou hast done, thy kingdom shall be thrown into confusion, and thine empire shall pass from thine hands as a punishment for that which thou hast wrought.
A direct prediction of his downfall.
Unmistakable. And the fulfillment was swift and dramatic, truly mirroring the severity of the prophecy. In 1870, just a few short years later, the Battle of Sedan sealed his fate. His entire army, one of Europe's most powerful, broken, and surrendered.
The greatest capitulation in modern history at that time, wasn't it?
It was. Napoleon III himself taken prisoner. Then, to compound the tragedy, his only son, the Prince Imperial, killed years later in the Zulu War, extinguishing his line.
Oh, wow.
The Second French Empire collapsed utterly. The Republic proclaimed. Paris besieged. A terrible year of civil war followed, even bloodier than the Franco-German War itself. Ultimately, Napoleon III suffered the same fate of exile that Baha'u'lláh had endured, a chilling, almost poetic mirror of his own disregard.
That is chilling. And the prophecies weren't just for kings and emperors, were they? They extended to the highest religious authorities, too.
That's right.
Pope Pius IX, the supreme pontiff of the Catholic Church, was another figure directly addressed. Not just head of a vast religious empire, but the vicar of Christ and the one who declared papal infallibility in 1870.
a very significant figure.
Seems like an especially bold target for a messenger from the Middle East.
Indeed. And Baha'u'llah's message to him was direct, incredibly audacious. It cut right to the heart of the Pope's perceived authority. He declared his own station, stating that the word which the Son Jesus concealed is made manifest, and even more profoundly, that he himself, the Father.
So Baha'u'lláh openly proclaiming he was the fulfillment of Christian prophecies about the return of Christ in the glory of the Father.
Exactly. Essentially saying, the one you've been waiting for has appeared. And then he delivered the direct command to the Pope. Abandon your temporal power.
Or papal states, right?
Yes, which were significant territories in Italy at the time. He said, leave his palaces unto such as desire them. Sell all the embellished ornaments, abandon his kingdom unto the kings, and emerge from his habitation with his face set towards the kingdom.
A direct challenge to the foundation of the papacy's temporal authority, urging a purely spiritual rule.
Precisely. And the fulfillment was equally striking. It occurred in the very same year, 1870, that papal infallibility was declared.
The same year.
The very same year. The long decline of the papal states culminated when Victor Emmanuel II's troops marched into Rome and seized the city. Pope Pius IX, refusing to recognize the new Kingdom of Italy, became famously known as the first prisoner of the Vatican.
Confined himself there until his death.
Yes. His last years, as a contemporary observed, were indeed filled with anguish as he saw his temporal dominion dismantled. Today, as we know, the Pope's temporal sovereignty is practically confined to the minuscule city of the Vatican.
A huge change.
A profound, visible shift. The source notes, the two souls of the eternal city, spiritual and secular, separated, only to collide more severely than ever before. A dramatic curtailment of worldly power, directly echoing Baha'u'llah's injunction.
And as one empire fell, another rose. Kaiser William I, the new victor after Napoleon III's fall, who united Germany, he also received a warning.
A powerful and direct warning, yes. In the Kitab-i-Aqdas, the most holy book, Baha'u'lláh told him to remember Napoleon's recent devastating fate. Think deeply, O king, concerning him, and concerning them who, like unto thee, have conquered cities and ruled over men.
I'll learn from history, basically, especially from the fall of those who resist divine guidance.
Exactly, and Baha'u'lláh didn't stop there. He gave a very specific, chilling prophecy for Berlin, the capital of the new German Empire, then basking in glory.
What was it?
O banks of the Rhine, we have seen you covered with gore, and ye shall have another turn. And we hear the lamentations of Berlin, though she be today in conspicuous glory.
Lamentations of Berlin. That's ominous, alluding to future devastation.
Far greater devastation. And the fulfillment, sadly, is painfully clear in modern history. The militaristic policies under William I, exacerbated by his self-willed and overweening grandson, William II.
And one who dismissed Bismarck.
Right, who dismissed Bismarck, the architect of the empire. Those policies led directly to the cataclysm of World War I. The Great War shattered Imperial Germany. Unimaginable suffering. William II himself deserted his armies, fled ignominiously to Holland, lived out his days in exile.
Wow.
German princes abdicated, the empire collapsed, leading directly to the lamentations of Berlin, tortured by the terms of a treaty monstrous in its severity, the Treaty of Versailles.
A stark, devastating illustration. Warnings ignored, leading to monumental self-inflicted devastation. The gore and lamentations became a terrible reality.
A terrible reality indeed. Moving further east now, across Europe, Alexander II, the Russian Tsar, was also directly addressed. Baha'u'lláh commanded him in a tablet to arise and summon the nations unto God. A divine call to use his immense power for spiritual upliftment. This command came with threefold warnings, emphasizing the spiritual pitfalls of absolute rule. Beware lest thy desire deter thee, beware lest thou barter away this sublime station, and beware lest thy sovereignty withhold thee from him who is the supreme sovereign.
A plea to recognize a higher authority.
Precisely. Now, while Alexander II wasn't the last Tsar, his retrogressive policy, later in his reign reversing reforms, cracking down, caused widespread disillusionment.
Led to nihilism, right.
Exactly, that radical anti-establishment movement, which led to intense terrorism, culminating in his tragic assassination.
And his successors.
They clung to unqualified absolutism, deepening the discontent. This simmering unrest, as history shows, exploded violently during the Great War.
The Russian Revolution.
The Russian Revolution. It profoundly impacted the country everywhere. The light of religion dimmed. Ecclesiastical institutions swept away, replaced by state atheism. A far-flung empire dismembered, losing vast territories, and the chief magistrate, together with his consort and his family and his dynasty, were swept into the vortex and perished brutally.
Horrifying. A chillingly precise fulfillment of those warnings, catastrophic consequences of rejecting guidance and clinging to unchecked power.
Absolutely chilling. And then there's Francis Joseph, the Hapsburg monarch, ruler of the Austro-Hungarian Empire for an incredible 68 years.
A very long reign.
Extraordinarily long. He was directly, almost personally, chided by Bahá'u'lláh in the Kitab-i-Aqdas for a specific failing, neglecting to investigate his cause or even seek his presence when the emperor visited the Holy Land, very near where Bahá'u'lláh was imprisoned.
He missed his chance.
He did. The tablet states, with profound irony, "Thou passed him by, and inquired not about him. We have been with thee at all times, and found thee clinging unto the branch, and heedless of the root."
The branch being Christianity.
Yes, his steadfast adherence to Christian tradition, the branch, while tragically missing the new root-level revelation for this age. From the very time those words were uttered, the Habsburg Empire became increasingly menaced by the forces of internal disintegration. Francis Joseph's reactionary ruler policies, his inability to address growing nationalism within his diverse empire, steadily eroded its foundations.
And his reign was marked by so many tragedies.
Almost unrelenting personal misfortunes and public disasters. His brother executed in Mexico, the crown prince perished in a suicide scandal, his empress assassinated.
And then the Archduke's murder.
Exactly. Igniting World War I, which led directly to the empire's dismemberment. What was once a vast, powerful dominion became a shrunken republic.
That eventually vanished completely.
Completely extinguished from the political map. The fate of his empire collapsing under internal strife and external conflict, a clear echo of Baha'u'llah's neglected warning.
It's truly remarkable how specific and accurate these prophecies are and how dramatically they came to pass. But what's even more remarkable, maybe, is that Baha'u'lláh uttered these messages, these dire warnings, knowing full well it would lead to intense suffering for himself and his followers.
He absolutely knew.
He bore that which no other person hath borne or will bear, decades of imprisonment, torture, banishment. Yet he did so solely as a token of his loving kindness and favor, for the purpose of quickening the dead and of redeeming all who are on earth.
What does this tell us about the purpose behind these prophecies beyond just prediction?
That's a critical point. It transforms our understanding. If we connect this to the bigger picture, it's not just about random calamities or even specific rulers being punished. It's about a fundamental, necessary transformation of the world order.
The breakdown of these old systems, absolute monarchies, entrenched religious authorities, is depicted as a direct consequence of their rejection of God's messengers and their failure to embody justice. These prophecies weren't just for punishment, but as a consequence of that rejection, leading to a necessary global upheaval.
A painful but necessary step.
Exactly. Painful but necessary in humanity's collective spiritual evolution. For you, our listener, this means seeing history not as random events, but as a purposeful unfolding, driven by profound spiritual forces. It suggests that when humanity resists a spiritual impulse for progress, old, rigid structures break down, often violently, clearing the ground for new foundations.
It's about that principle that divine warnings ignored lead to inevitable consequences that ultimately serve a higher transformative purpose.
Precisely.
Okay, now let's shift our focus. Let's look at those who were, in a sense, even closer to the fire, the direct persecutors of the faith's founders and its early followers.
Right there on the ground.
We're talking about the Turkish and Persian monarchs who held direct political jurisdiction over Baha'u'lláh and the nascent Baha'i community. What was their fate when they not only ignored these divine summons, but actively sought to extirpate, to completely wipe out this new faith?
Well, the Sultan Abdulaziz of the Ottoman Empire was, as the source unequivocally states, arguably the most powerful, the more exalted in rank, the more preeminent in guilt.
More preeminent in guilt, strong word.
Very strong. He held unparalleled authority and was directly responsible for banishing Baha'u'lláh 3 times Baghdad to Constantinople, Constantinople to Adrianople, then Adrianople to the prison city of Akka.
Keeping him captive for nearly 40 years.
Nearly 40 years. To this despotic sovereign, Baha'u'lláh directly summoned him, saying, with a tone of both command and loving counsel, "Hearken, O king! Observe, O king, with thine inmost heart and with thy whole being the precepts of God, and walk not in the paths of the oppressor. Place not thy reliance on thy treasures. Put thy whole confidence in the grace of God."
A plea for righteous governance, spiritual accountability.
Exactly. Set before thine eyes God's unerring balance, and as one standing in his presence, weigh in that balance thine actions every day, every moment of thy life. But the warnings issued by Bahá'u'lláh to the Sultan and his empire were dire, incredibly specific, foretelling a collapse both internal and external.
What kind of warnings?
In the Law-i-Raiz, Baha'u'lláh prophesied, "The day is approaching when the land of mystery Adrianople and what is beside it shall be changed, and commotion shall appear, and blood will flow out of all things." He continued with even more direct threats. "Soon will he seize you in his wrathful anger, and sedition will be stirred up in your midst, and your dominions will be disrupted." He even cited past calamities in Constantinople like fire and plague as unheeded warnings.
He pointed to past events as warnings, too.
Yes. Then, in the Kitab-i-Aqdas, he directly apostrophizes Constantinople itself, the glorious capital, with a chilling prophecy. "O spot that art situate on the shores of the two seas, the throne of tyranny hath verily been established upon thee. It shall soon perish, and thy daughters and thy widows and all the kindreds that dwell within thee shall lament."
Predicting the city's loss of status, the suffering of its people.
Precisely. And most chillingly perhaps in the Law of Fuad, Baha'u'lláh unmistakably foretold the Sultan's own imminent fall and that of his chief minister, Fuad Pasha. "Soon will we dismiss the one who is like unto him, and will lay hold on their chief who ruleth the land."
That level of specific detail, direct prophecy, it's astounding. So how did these catastrophic predictions unfold for the Ottoman Empire and its rulers?
The fulfillment was devastating and remarkably swift. Sultan Abdulaziz was summarily deposed and assassinated by his own ministers shortly after Baha'u'llah's banishment to Akka.
Wow.
Very quickly, this was followed by a succession of degenerate sultans: Murad V, Abdulhamid II, the Red Sultan, Muhammad V, Muhammad VI, who presided over relentless decline. The Ottoman Empire entered a period of swift decline, dramatic dismemberment, losing vast territories: Crete, the Balkans, Serbia, Montenegro, Romania, Cyprus, Egypt, Tunis, Bosnia, Herzegovina.
Just falling apart.
Falling apart. The Armenian massacres further stained its history with horrifying brutality. The Young Turk Revolution in 1908 ultimately led to Abdulhamid II's abdication, stripping the Sultan of most remaining power. World War I then provided the final fatal blow. The source recounts the precipitate flight and complete destruction of the army of Jamal Pasha.
The very commander who threatened Baha'u'llah's tomb in Abdu'l-Bahá.
The very same one. He had sworn to raise the tomb and crucify Abdu'l-Bahá. His army was destroyed. The war led to the complete collapse and dismemberment of the empire. The Ottoman Sultanate and Caliphate, 6.5 centuries of rule, abolished. Constantinople, once glorious, stripped of its pomp, abandoned as capital, fulfilling Baha'u'llah's prophecy of its lamentation.
A complete and utter collapse of an ancient, powerful order. Okay, now across the border in neighboring Persia, the situation for Nasir-ad-Din Shah was even more direct, wasn't it, in terms of personal culpability?
Oh, absolutely. The source identifies him as the Prince of Oppressors.
Strong title again.
It is. He was personally responsible for ordering the Bab's execution, imprisoning Baha'u'lláh in the infamous Siyah-Shal, the Black Pit dungeon, instigating banishments, and overseeing the brutal slaughter of at least 20,000 followers.
20,000. Unbelievable cruelty.
Unparalleled cruelty against the new faith. To this truly despotic sovereign, Baha'u'lláh addressed words that were both a challenge and an invitation. He wrote, "Look upon this youth, O king, with the eyes of justice. Judge thou then with truth concerning what hath befallen him. Of a verity, God hath made thee his shadow amongst men."
An appeal to the Shah's sense of justice, his understanding of his own authority.
Exactly. Baha'u'lláh also warned the Shah to regard thy sovereignty as the most contemptible of thy possessions in light of the new revelation. Worldly power pales in comparison to spiritual insight. Baha'u'lláh even expressed a poignant hope that the Shah would examine these matters and bring hope to the hearts, a last chance for justice.
But that hope was unfulfilled.
Tragically unfulfilled. The Shah's reaction was implacable hatred. Unable to directly punish Baha'u'lláh in Akkay, he directed his vengeance on Badi', Baha'u'llah's young, courageous messenger.
The one who carried the tablet.
Yes, carried it on foot across deserts and mountains. Badi was captured, tortured mercilessly for 3 days, then brutally slain, his body left exposed. This act sealed the Shah's fate.
And the retribution.
Equally profound and dramatic, Nasir-ad-Din Shah himself was assassinated, shot on the eve of his jubilee, a time meant for reforms and amnesty.
The irony.
Incredible irony. And the dramatic detail from the source. His dead body had to be propped up in his royal carriage to defer news of his murder, maintain the illusion of rule.
Wow. Just incredible.
His successors, Muzaffar-ed-Din Shah, Muhammad Ali Shah, Aban Shah, ruled ignobly. Increasing dissent, constitutional movement, revolution, deposition of the last two monarchs.
Yeah.
The Qajar dynasty, ruling Persia for 130 years, definitively extinguished.
A complete wipeout of a dynasty. What a striking and ironic turn of events, especially given their persecution.
It truly is. And a particularly striking detail from the source. Their myriad progeny, once a beehive of princelings, were reduced to beggary.
Reduced to beggary.
Some, in desperation, even turned to the Baha'i World Center for aid. The source notes they received refusal for political assistance. The faith is strictly non-political, but were offered pecuniary help.
Underscoring the complete reversal of fortunes. A powerful symbol of spiritual triumph over earthly tyranny.
Absolutely.
So if we take a moment to reflect on all these prophecies, their astonishing, almost surgical fulfillment, what's the core takeaway? What fundamental Baha'i principle do these historical events powerfully underscore?
These prophecies and their fulfillment underscore a core Baha'i principle that's utterly transformative. True authority is fundamentally spiritual, emanating directly from God. Temporal power, no matter how immense or absolute, is inherently fleeting, especially when used to oppress, persecute, or reject divine guidance.
A powerful lesson in accountability.
Exactly. Demonstrating that even those at the very pinnacle of worldly power are subject to a higher spiritual law. For you, our listener, this means grappling with the idea that there's a profound, overarching spiritual dynamic at play in history. It shows that ignoring or actively resisting a divine manifestation has profound, cataclysmic, self-destructive consequences for established orders.
Challenging us to look beyond immediate political or economic causes for historical upheaval.
Right. To consider the spiritual dimension. It's a call to understand that genuine progress and stability depend not on clinging to power, but on aligning human institutions with the timeless, just principles brought by God's messengers.
A dramatic shift in perspective, suggesting the ultimate forces shaping our world are not merely human, but divine.
That's the core message, yes.
Okay, given all this upheaval, this dramatic downfall of so many kings, emperors, the collapse of empires we've just discussed, a crucial question naturally arises. Does all this mean the Baha'i faith is inherently against kingship as an institution? Does it advocate for a world without monarchs?
That's an excellent and very important question. And the answer, derived directly, unambiguously from the Baha'i writings, is a resounding no.
No.
No. The catastrophic fall and extinction of these specific dynasties, these unjust rulers, should in no wise be confounded with a condemnation of the future position or the fundamental institution of kingship itself. The Baha'i faith clearly distinguishes between the actions of individual rulers, who may fail justice, and the divinely ordained principle of righteous governance, which can manifest through kingship when properly guided.
So it's about the quality of the kingship, not the institution itself.
Precisely. The Baha'i writings, in fact, affirm that regard for the rank of sovereigns is divinely ordained. This isn't entirely new, is it?
No, you hear echoes in other scriptures.
Right. Supported by previous teachings. Jesus saying, "Render to Caesar the things that are Caesar's." St. Paul declaring the powers that be are ordained of God, acknowledging legitimate earthly authority. Baha'u'lláh himself states that the majesty of kingship is one of the signs of God, and clarifies, "We do not wish that the countries of the world should be deprived thereof."
So it's valued.
It's valued when just. The Baha'i perspective is that a just king is the shadow of God on earth. All should seek shelter under the shadow of his justice and rest in the shade of his favor. The problem wasn't kingship, but the unjust exercise of that power. Baha'u'llah's vision for future rulers isn't about abolishing kingship, but profoundly transforming it. He states very clearly, "It is not our wish to lay hands on your kingdoms. Our mission is to seize and possess the hearts of men."
Meaning it's not a political movement to overthrow governments.
Exactly. It's a spiritual one seeking to transform the hearts that govern. He then prophesies the rise of just kings who will embrace the faith and become instruments of divine justice. How great the blessedness that awaiteth the king who will arise to aid my cause and my kingdom. Such a king is the very eye of mankind, the luminous ornament on the brow of creation, the fountainhead of blessings unto the whole world. It paints this picture of a truly enlightened, just ruler.
That's a beautiful image. So not condemnation, but a vision of purification and elevation.
Precisely. He even foresees that ere long will God raise up from among the kings one who will aid his loved ones. There's also a specific prophecy for the land of Ta, which refers to Tehran, Persia's capital, stating, God shall, if it be his will, bless thy throne with one who will rule with justice, who will gather together the flock of God.
Suggesting even where the faith faced the worst persecution, a just ruler is envisioned.
Exactly. One who will restore order and serve the people.
This truly clarifies that the purpose of religion, from a Baha'i view, isn't to abolish social structures like kingship, but transform them from within, guiding them towards justice, righteousness, selfless service, instead of tyranny and self-interest. It offers a profound lens to examine leadership. So this prompts a question for you, our listener. What qualities do you genuinely look for in leadership? Political, corporate, spiritual? Are they aligned with these divine standards of justice, service, detachment from mere worldly power? How does this vision of a just king contrast with leaders we often see today?
Excellent questions. And this profound transformation isn't limited to kingship. Alongside the dramatic decline in temporal power, the source highlights a no less startling deterioration in the influence exercised by the world's spiritual leaders.
Ah, the ecclesiastics.
Yes. As it powerfully states, power has been seized indeed from both kings and ecclesiastics. The glory of the former eclipsed, the power of the latter irretrievably lost, meaning their ability to guide and unify humanity has diminished. The Kitab-i-Quran Bahá'u'llah's Book of Certitude contains his universal censure on this. He states with striking directness, leaders of religion in every age have hindered their people from attaining the shores of eternal salvation, inasmuch as they held the reins of authority in their mighty grasp.
Hindered salvation. That's a bold accusation against spiritual guides.
It is. The reasons given are stark. Primarily lust of leadership and a want of knowledge and understanding regarding the true signs of God's new revelation. The consequences, tragically, are even more profound. By their sanction and authority, every prophet of God hath drunk from the chalice of sacrifice.
Meaning, historically, established religious leaders often instigated the persecution and martyrdom of new divine messengers.
That's the argument. He laments that people, earnestly seeking truth, have placed themselves unreservedly under the authority of these pompous and hypocritical leaders, for they have no sight, no hearing, no heart of their own to distinguish truth from falsehood.
A powerful call for independent investigation of truth.
Absolutely critical in the Baha'i view.
That's a heavy indictment, saying religious leaders can actually be the biggest obstacles to truth. What does Baha'u'lláh mean when he refers to them as veils of glory? That's an interesting phrase.
It's a really insightful phrase, isn't it? These religious leaders, because of their esteemed positions, their outward piety, their perceived knowledge, often become veils of glory. They aren't veils of darkness or ignorance, but veils of light and prestige.
Okay. Their own status becomes the veil.
Exactly. They're so used to being the interpreters of God's word, so revered, that their very eminence becomes an obstacle to recognizing a new manifestation. Followers look to them, and if the leaders reject the new truth, their rejection becomes a powerful barrier. Baha'u'lláh asserts, to pierce such veils is the mightiest of all acts.
Requires profound spiritual discernment and courage.
Immense courage, to look beyond accepted authority when a new revelation appears. Their motives, he says, are rooted in self-interest. In leadership, they have recognized the ultimate object of their endeavor. They've busied themselves with selfish calculation to maintain power. He goes as far as to say, the source and origin of tyranny have been the divines. A radical statement challenging the traditional view of religious authority as inherently benevolent.
Wow.
And history, unfortunately, seems full of examples of this pattern. Abraham cast into fire by the divines of his age, Moses slandered and challenged by priests and elders.
Jesus crucified at the instigation of the religious establishment.
Right. And Muslims suffering grievously at the hands of priests of idolatry and Jewish doctors. Enduring persecution, exile. The pattern, Baha'u'lláh argues, is consistent.
And these critiques were directed specifically to leaders of other contemporary faiths too, right? Not just past figures.
Well, yes. To the Jewish people, Baha'u'lláh declared prophecies fulfilled. The most great law is come, and the ancient beauty ruleth upon the throne of David. He identified Zion, Haifa, and Jerusalem as hearing God's voice, Haifa, where the Baha'i World Center is now, and the strong city as Akka, his prison city.
A direct call to recognize the promised return.
Absolutely. And to the Zoroastrian priestly caste, he identified himself with the promised Shah Baham, a key messianic figure, warning them to seek none other but him, not be led astray by high priests. He offered a redefinition. He indeed is a high priest who hath seen the light and hastened unto the way leading to the beloved. a call for spiritual insight over inherited position.
Insight over tradition.
Exactly. However, the immediate, most pronounced impact and critique, as the source clarifies, was directed at Muslim and Christian ecclesiastics. The Muslim divines, particularly in Persia, described as the first who hoisted the standard of revolt against the Bab and Bahá'u'lláh. They instigated horrific massacres one Renan called perhaps unparalleled in the history of the world.
Unbelievable brutality.
Their actions, in turn, sowed the seeds of the disintegration of their own institutions, weakening their own authority. Regarding Christian clergy, the source notes that while the Baha'i administrative order is rapidly advancing in the West, by whose ecclesiastical exponents that order is being increasingly assailed, pointing to ongoing resistance.
This profound analysis of religious authority, how it can guide but also tragically hinder, really impacts how you might think about your own spiritual journey, doesn't it?
It really does.
It asks you, the listener, are you truly seeing with your own eyes, hearing with your own ears? Or blindly following tradition or leadership without independent investigation? How does this speak to the paramount importance of independent investigation of truth in your own spiritual journey, rather than just relying on intermediaries, no matter how esteemed?
It's a powerful call to personal spiritual accountability, genuine inquiry.
Absolutely.
So, to bring our deep dive today to a close, let's just quickly recap the core themes we've explored. We've delved into the incredible directness, the unprecedented nature of Baha'u'llah's messages, sent from profound vulnerability to the world's most powerful figures. We've witnessed the precise, dramatic, often devastating fulfillment of his prophecies, a powerful, undeniable testament to the divine origin and authority of the Baha'i faith. And we've made that critical distinction between supporting the institution of kingship when just versus unequivocally condemning unjust rulers or religious leaders who misuse their power.
Right, for oppression, self-interest, or suppressing divine truth.
Exactly. These insights collectively reveal that the true purpose of religion and spirituality extends far beyond just personal salvation or individual piety.
It's profoundly about societal transformation.
Societal transformation, establishing justice, creating a unified global order. The breakdown of old systems, political and religious, presented not as random chaos, but as part of a larger divine process.
A necessary upheaval, clearing the way for something new.
Precisely. A grand narrative of divine purpose unfolding in human history.
Absolutely. And the source material, always so rich with insights, leaves us with a truly powerful, provocative question. Something to ponder as we look at the world around us today. Might not the process manifest in the course of its operation during the tumultuous years in store for mankind? A commotion still more devastating than it has yet produced. Makes you think, doesn't it? What stands out to you from this deep dive about the ongoing transformation of the world we're living in? And what role do these historical patterns of divine warnings and their fulfillment play in shaping our collective future? It truly gives you a lot to reflect upon.
It really does.
Well, that concludes part 2 of our deep dive into The Promised Day is Come. We hope this exploration has been as illuminating for you as it has been for us.
Definitely.
Stay tuned because the final analysis of this incredible series will be coming out very soon, later this week.
Look forward to it.
Thank you for joining us on the deep dive here on Baha'i On Air. Remember to subscribe, share, comment, send us your suggestions for future topics you'd love for us to explore.
We always look forward to diving in with you again soon.
We do. Take care, everyone.